Hello and good morning, Internet. This is Joshua Kitts, the director of the Composed Dream Game RPG Marketplace, and I am surrounded by a huge stack of role-playing games by our many UK publishers, our many British publishers, and I'm going to do my very best to go relatively quickly, touching very lightly on all of these titles. How many are there? I don't know. We're going to have to try to keep count together. These titles are available through our Canadian RPG Marketplace, as well as, at minimum, in PDF on our UK Marketplace, but most will also be available in print as well. There. Alright, so we're going to start off with a couple of publishers that were the very first to join our marketplace right after we met them at Tabletop Scotland. Don't play this game. This is by Parable Games. This is a solo horror role-playing game appropriate for the season. It's currently October. The idea here is you've been kind of mirrors some classic video media where you've watched this movie and now you're stuck and you're going to, etc. So this is a solo journaling role-playing game. They do have a companion journal, which also has some specific question prompts in it as well, and it is dice rolling to boot. So there are some blood splatter dice, the solo core game itself, and then a kind of customized record notebook for your journaling. Not critical at all to apply this, but it does enhance the experience for sure. Now, Parable, that just came out this year. Now, Parable Games, sort of first major work was Shiver. I've run this a number of times. I will probably do a bit of a deeper dive on Shiver. There's a whole stack of products. I'll touch super briefly on them. Shiver uses something called the archetype system that does use custom dice. Essentially, you do have core skills. You roll you have an archetype that is best at each of those core skills. So the scholar here is best at smarts. When they're rolling that, they'll roll 5 dice instead of just 3, and you short 1. There's a few other things. Shiver is a neat horror cinema role-playing game. There's the custom dice there. Fantastic for one-shots. They've also done some expansions that make it work a little bit better or support the longer-term play or show that it can support the longer-term play as well. I like it a lot. Future editor Josh here. I spent 5 minutes talking through all these Shiver titles that were on the table in front of me. So I'm actually going to move that section to the end of the video right after the credits. If you want to get a walkthrough through all of those Shiver titles, head on there. We're going to move more rapid fire through the rest of this. I did a fairly long video about Aegean. Aegean uses essentially the World of Darkness. You can go watch that here. World of Darkness D10 engine, so 8, 9s, 10s are successes. 10s can kind of do something special. There's a lot of interesting city building and downtime in politics, and you can go to the Olympic Games and other games and so on in Aegean that I really like, as well as that kind of like mythic Greek adventure or militaristic Greek adventure. There's a couple supplements out for this already. The Book of Empires right here is more your grounded, covers Crete. Oh. Book of Empires covers Crete. There's a couple of adventures, the Persian invasion, some of Troy, etc. And then the Book of Heroes is a bit more focused on your mythic stuff, your gods and your cults and so on. So the Golden Shirt, similar. The Island of Pelops is just about to release for Aegean. Aegean does have D10 dice that you can pick up as well. There are 2 different types of D10 dice sets. There's these black ones which have for the 10, let me see, a bull. Or there are blue sets that have, there's kind of a package there of all the D10s. An owl. Might not quite focus in on the owl as the D10. If you want to know more about Aegean and how the system works, go check out that other video I recorded. Alright, so we've set that aside. Aegean does also have a GM Screen, which has useful, quick rules lookups, names, deity summaries, combat summaries, hubris, etc. Wild, I have a video about Wild as well. Is about Dreamshare technology. It uses a custom tarot deck. There's a solo play scenario you can play through in here. There's lookup for all the tarot cards to get additional meanings, so you can create your situation, your obstacle, what's going to help you there, what you need to do to resolve the scene. And then generally when you're designing a scenario, you just come up with some locations and a basic concept. I've run this with 4 people. I've run it with 1 person. Enjoy it quite a bit. This is your character sheet. Actually, you have a rating in the different types of cards. And this is my own deck of cards here. Show that real quick. They're nice and kind of shimmering, mostly black, but they're a bit of color highlight. And it always has the reverse meaning as well as the straightforward meaning of the card. That really helps you set up scenes and interpret things quickly. But you also use these cards for resolving your successes and failures. That aside. Alright. So we've covered a few horror. We're going to do a couple more. These Wretched Tales, this is a collection of 3 from X-Stasis. One of the ones in there is Final Girl. These all use the Wretched and Alone system, which means you do need a Jenga tower to play them, and when that Jenga tower collapses, something happens. Generally, there's a little bit of journaling in this one. This one is sort of your straightforward, you have been injured and you're running from a slasher kind of character. They've suggested, I think, that for this one you actually do an audio recording rather than journaling, which can be a neat way to do it, because it kind of gives you that breathless vibe. The other 2 in here are this Restless Oh Catch Me, and this Wretched House, where you moved into a haunted house. Liminal is by Neon Rot. You can play through this solo. This has a lot of random events, room generators, the shape of the room, and what you see there in there. So this would be a very little prep. You encounter entities in it, and fundamentally what you are tracking is everybody's fatigue level. Because when you encounter something horrifying, it fatigues you. When you run from something horrifying, it fatigues you. That's Liminal _ survival guide. Last Night on Earth. Wow, we're hitting a bunch of horror all in a row. Last Night on Earth has the idea of you have come back to life, you have 1 night left to solve it. It reminds me of The Crow or something along those lines. This is a GM'd game for a small group. It's also by X-Stasis. Midwinter Ghost Stories. This is 5 system-agnostic scenarios, so horror scenarios. I believe there's a tie-in of a wedding dress across all the scenarios that kind of lets them relate to each other. Chorogaiden, that's Neon Rot as well. There's a Chorogaiden supplement somewhere. I'm peeking to try to see where it might be. Is it over there? Yes, it's there. So that is brand new. That's a supplement for Chorogaiden. This is a Japanese horror kind of inspired scenario or rule set that uses a dice pool element to it. Chorogaiden Sunflower is more scenario, more flavors, some new, I think they might be calling them archetypes too, or like character types, as well as some rules for using Chorogaiden in LARPs. So Sunflower adds the LARP rules. One more song. This is a solo play. You grab some music, you journal along with it. Inside the book here itself, there are spaces for you to write. There are scenes. You listen to a song. You're meant to sort of write out what you feel after the song, or decide after the song, generally speaking. Squeeze, this is you're going caving, subterranean claustrophobic terror. It's light. There is a GM. It's for 2 to 6 players. You just need 4d4 dice per player, and 1 full set of role-playing dice. So it's really about kind of you've just gone caving. You get lost. You're sort of stuck. There's a bit of panic. It is generally there are some sort of monsters you can encounter as well, but a nice rule light system. What Lurks Above, this is also by Parable Games. That's the Squeeze was as well. So again, a light, you're heading up into the clouds. There's environmental dangers. It's just got some interesting kind of random tables of what you can encounter up in your Zeppelin as well, and a simple resolution system as you're going and exploring the skies. Show of Hands, this is one by We Evolve. So a Show of Hands is a GM-less one-shot game where you are disembodied hands and kind of like a circus, and things are happening, and you don't need dice or anything. Everything can be resolved by hand gestures and rock, paper, scissors, and so on. There are some dice rolls should you want to use it, and you could even write your entire character sheet on your hand, should you wish to. Gaslight Club uses the Your Zero engine. This has a nice little rule summary right there on the inner page of what that system kind of looks like. The idea is essentially it's the 1920s, you're all partying, and it turns out the bar is run by androids. So you need to figure that out. This is probably something you could sort of go quick and get through it in a session, but you could also take your time with it a little bit more, and it would be 3 sessions or so. Minion, this is you are the minions in the dungeon. You have an overlord. Adventurers are going to stomp through the area and try to defeat you. And what do you do about that? There's a bunch of interesting random tables in here. Relatively light combat rules. Rules for progression. Rules for the overseer, who is your GM. And then, of course, the adventurers who are going to come and kick in the door. And you have to see off. Rhapsody of Blood is a Worlds of Legacy game. That's a powered by the Apocalypse style game. So you have playbooks, you're rolling 2d6. What Worlds of Legacy games always do is they have a multi-generational aspect, every session you're meant to play the descendants of your prior characters. Rhapsody of Blood has this vibe of sort of Castlevania, where you have this evil castle or lair and Dark Lord that keeps showing up over and over again, and you are trying to defeat it every time it shows up. That's the quick version of Rhapsody of Blood. A set of scrubs. This is a solo role-playing game. Journaling. Usually it's relatively quick. I think you're supposed to light a candle at one point and blow it out, at least when you finish. So the idea is you're exploring the lifetime of these scrubs as they get worn by many different people and get dirty, and eventually they go to the incinerator. Operation Santa. This is also by CM or Chris Lowry and Beyond Cataclysm. This is dual-statted for both Borg and Troika, where Santa and the North Pole is toxic wasteland, nuclear refinery. There are penguins that you'll encounter, polar bears, etc. Well, of course there's penguins in the North Pole, right? I mean, no, but that's okay. They're there anyway. Tyranosaur Inside. There's both a 5e version of this and a Borg version of this. There's a giant, mechanical, monstrous Tyrannosaurus Rex, and you enter through a small hole in its foot and go explore, and inside are more Tyrannosaurs of various sizes. In fact, even its cells, arguably, are made out of Tyrannosaurs. It's silly fun adventure. Lucky for None is a sort of community, I would call this a GM-less one-shot, where you are randomly rolling for events and bad things are happening in your small town. Bad things. And everything is resolved with a D13. So if you pick up Lucky for None, you get a D13. There is a face here that is oddly shaped that will never roll, and it comes up a 7. So Lucky for None, sort of your low prep, no prep horror that you can play together. Cats vs. Dogs is a silly little game where you argue about who's better, cats or dogs, and it's, a quick, light, one page, or one page on multi-side. Forgotten Ballad, a sword and songs adventure game. This is sort of a love letter to Zelda and similar games where you play music and need to learn music to defeat monsters and learn tricks, and you make your heroes together. It is a GM'd game, fairly rules light. You're finding relics, you're disarming traps. There are guardians that you do need to overcome and riddles you do need to solve, and just songs you need to learn so that you can beat them, and so on. For Borg, this is I want to say silly variant of Borg, where everything you roll uses D4s, and you have stats like Fight, Finesse, Friend, and Fate. Fate is unlike other skills. It's your willingness to face down the devil and spit in his dirty face. A real roll of the dice. Alright, and there are some random generation tables and events and triangle goblins, because of course the goblins have triangle faces because you're D4s. Everything is D4s. Another Borg variant. This is Punk is Dead, a post-apocalyptic songwriting role-playing game by Critical Kit. This one You don't really need to be very good at writing songs or anything. Punk songs are kind of like that. But you do all play together. There is a game master. You are making songs together. I'm quite sure there's a game master. There are a lot of games on this table. It is possible I'm wrong about that. The idea is it is post-apocalyptic. And all you have left is to travel around and make your songs and your music. Alright, so over here we have Quintessence, the role-playing game, and Age of Goblins. Age of Goblins is a campaign setting, ideally for Quintessence, but very usable with other systems. Because it is mostly settings with lots of ideas for customizing goblins, where you play as said goblins. Quintessence is a generic game. It has a kind of neat track that for different attacks will take different number of moves on the track, and that track often also works nicely for chases, so it's good for that aspect as well. And there's sort of these, like, stone is a attribute, I believe, so that kind of alludes to these elemental things that can be used for different, well, certainly not just fantasy, like your stone might be like how hard and tough you are in a hard-bitten noir setting, and similar in other sci-fi. Age of Goblins here, just give it a quick flip. It's got some nice maps, lots of random tables for events and materials and what goblins are up to, and so on. I feel like I need to grab another goblin game. We do often also have and carry Goblin Quest. This is a silly game where you play a series of 6 goblins who are going to die horribly. There is also, like, every player has 6 goblins that they're going to go through in the scenario or session. My favorite variant, there are a few in here, is probably Sean Bean Quest, where you all play a series of different Sean Beans that are going to die horribly. Dragon Dowser is a solo journaling game about going and trying to find an egg and bringing it back, and hopefully it hatches. There is a custom deck where you lay out, I haven't actually opened this before, little custom deck of regular playing cards. Let's see very quickly if I can get it open. But they are beautifully illustrated and have the custom text on here rather than you having to do the lookup table that you would normally do. We sell these as a bundle, so you're always getting both. If you're getting the PDF, I think you're getting the... so this one here says the 2 of clubs. That's going to take some clearing up. And let's find, say, an 8 of spades. This is a treasure trove if you know what to look for. So you lay these out and you go traveling along the grid of cards that you've made, and you're solo playing together, and hopefully you find one of the last dragon eggs and are able to bring it back. Okay, so we do have Troika itself. This is the most recent supplement for it, out of hard copies of Troika itself here in Canada. But this is the most recent Troika supplement from Smithsonian Arts Council themselves. This is Season of the Snail, so this is an adventure supplement. There's a lovely map there, some random tables as always, what's going on in different areas, good stuff. The Last Job You Ever Need. This is one of our newer releases. This is a GM'd, no prep, one-shot where you're sort of doing your Ocean's 11 heist, where you've all come together, you all have certain specialties. That's based off of the cards that you have. People are better at certain suits, and that's kind of their specialties on the job. The job is created through the cards to begin with, and then the GM is playing the house, and things really go awry when once they finally get the thing that they're after, and that's when people can die and things can go really astray. But generally speaking, you're looking at this as a raising the stakes. Everything is done with regular decks of playing cards. Each player has their own deck of cards. Mouse in the House, a small game about mice folk. This is by Chloe Montgomery. It's you can play multiple sessions for sure. Generally speaking, they'll be pretty short form sessions. You know, you might be playing for an hour or 2 hours. The idea here is that you are tiny mice, or at least mice-like creatures, who are actually in the space that you're gaming in. So if you're gaming at your house, you're actually in that house as mice. Love and Barbed Wire. This is a two-player letter-writing game set in the First World War, where you exchange a series of letters with each other. It's by Plain Sailing Games. These other two are as well by Alex White. This is a solo game about the tail gunners of Bomber Command. There are missions that you go on that you can lose and get shot down. Between those missions, you can use some deck of cards for what is happening in your downtime. That's sort of a part you'll probably journal. The operations part, you're probably just going to kind of mechanically go through and see if you survive and what happens to you. The Long Road Home. This is a GM-less one-shot game. It's a bit of a love letter to The Lord of the Rings and similar, where you have gone on this epic quest and you all get back together and are journeying home afterwards and telling what happened to you during the quest, how you feel now about the world that you've saved it, and how it has changed you. Okay, let's have a look at Spire, The City Must Fall, which has a number of supplements. This is a D10 pool system. You are dark elves in this massive fantasy megalith structure looking to overthrow the political regime that is controlling the city, the corrupt city. There are gnolls, there are other things. You have, you're organized into cells. Your revolutionaries are organized into cells. You can decide a little bit about how much magic there is, but we would call this a fantasy role-playing game. Generally speaking, Spire has a Magister's Guide, so that's your GM guide and handbook as a supplement as well, which can give you some insights, some additional insights. There's a supplement here that we have called Shadow Operations, which has a number of scenarios. It's quite a few. 11, and some advice on running one-shots. A couple titles in here are written by Canadian designers, but this is published by Rowan Ruck and Descartes, and there is also a GM Screen, and there is a large supplement that we have copies of still called Strata. So there's a lot going on in Strata, lots of scenarios, some additional rules. I think there's some additional classes, sort of your classic large supplement for Spire. Okay, let's have a look at Tournament Arc here. It's been sitting here. This is a Belonging Outside of Belonging, or No Dice, No Masters system that's pioneered in the Dream Askew, Dream Apart, also popularized in things like Wanderhome. Tournament Arc is a game about sports teams, so it could be any sort of sports team. The vibe here is sort of a little bit kind of your anime sports team, maybe, but it could sort of be anything. It's a little bit more about the feeling of having been on a sports team. It's not laying out like specific rules for a particular sports team. You're meant to use it for anything. Of how the players interact, how they feel about it, how the tournament goes, those sorts of things. So this is a GM-less, dice-less. You're using hard and soft moves. You're exchanging tokens when you use a hard move. It requires a token. Normal moves don't require anything. I think soft moves, you earn a token. Yeah. Okay, over here we have Die the RPG. This is based mostly on a web series called Die. The players are all folks from our world who have been transported to another world. And each of the classes has a specific die that they get to roll that they use specific mechanics for. So the Neo here uses the D10. So the Neo is a chromed up cyberpunk rogue in a fantasy adventuring party who hunts desperately for the next score to fuel your powers. Yeah. Die does have... We do have a supplement for Die called Bizarre Love Triangles. There's 3 scenarios inside this one that'll, unsurprisingly, have to do with love triangles. Let's look at some of the stack here. So, Aces Over the Adriatic. This is originally a French role-playing game by Jérôme Misso. The translation here is published into English, is published by Critical Kit. This is all about, in the 1930s or late 1920s, the challenge of flying over the Adriatic and flying to different places and finding the best routes and so on. So the very early flying boats, seaplanes, and pioneering there, and you might get lost, and so on. This is a solo role-playing game. This stack here has a fair bit of Critical Kit, so another one, and this is solo role-playing, hell-building role-playing game. This is really sort of like Explorer, or a growth of your domain. That's the main thrust of the solo play. You're trying to grow your domain, or your plane of hell that you're controlling, and explore that. Be Like a Crow. This won UK Games Expo Award. It's a bit of a classic solo play by now, and there are a number of supplements for Be Like a Crow as well that we have here. So this is, you are a crow. You can play different types of crows, 4 different types, I believe. I think there's a mechanical crow, and you're using cards to resolve actions and also generate a little bit about what's going on. And it's kind of on the journaling side of things a little bit, but there's a bit more fighty bits and challenges and so on. So there's a couple supplements for this. There's Cthulhu, a cosmic horror setting for Be Like a Crow, so add some fear mechanics. A pirate one, The Crow's Nest, as well as a Western one. And this includes new rules for archetypes and money. Cool. So that's Be Like a Crow and some supplements for it. We also do have Be Like a Cat, which is done with a 2-player variant. So similar gameplay, just different themes and what's happening in the events on the cards and so on. There's a whole slew of adventures by Critical Kit for 5th edition. I think I'm going to not say much of this, just show them off super quickly. So Lock and the Blind Raven is a horror one. There's a solo one called Once We Were Gods. I'm not going to read out every one of them. There's sort of this Western one for level 10. There's Macbeth. One of the newer ones we have here is High Stakes, where you're on an airship. And there are a few others as well. Okay, Unleashed is your solo, but probably more orientated towards multiple games where you're all players, where you're all dogs. It is gemless, and you're trying to pull off heists with your pack, and you can generate things with dice for events. And the challenge is, and this is sort of like an act-based scenario. So you could have your team, and you could play through multiple stories, but would kind of have a 3-act, 4-act? Looks like a 3-act structure each time. White Sands is a GM game about the fight for clean air. It's slightly in the future, sort of got your post-apocalyptic vibe, where corporations and so on have so contaminated the air that you're now trying to deal with that. All right. We've got our last few here. Don't want to forget that. Okay, Rune Cairn. This is a sold like specifically one-on-one, so 1 GM and 1 player. You go into dungeons, you respawn, it's fighty, that depending on what gear you pick up, it'll change. There's nice random tables. This is a variant of Cairn, but it's a little bit more, crunchy in terms of the combat and what happens to you than Cairn. So it is going to be, you die, you respawn, you try to go fight some of the same monsters, some of them will stay dead, but some of them reset when you respawn as well. You do lose your spiritual power every time you die, so you can't do that forever. See where you get to. There's a bestiary as well with, I want to say like 100 monsters in it that you can also tweak for other Cairn or Odd-like type games. We Deal in Lead. So these Rune Cairn and We Deal in Lead. This is by Odin's Beard, who is an Albertan originally, but has been in the UK for 20 years or so. This is We Deal in Lead is a Weird West GM game with fantasy elements and kind of parallel dimensions, so you can go through rifts and monsters can come through rifts. It's kind of like the base idea. Easy to do variants and tweak it. Has a bit of a classic adventure gaming vibe. Alright. So, we've got one more Borg-based game. Ronin is a complete system on its own. So all the rules you need to play are in here. Character classes, adventures, encounters, how to commit seppuku. The idea here in Ronin is that you're in perpetual twilight and everybody is fighting over what little food remains, and chaos has come to the world. We do have some character pads still here in Canada that you can pick up. And there is both a solo version of Ronin supplement of kind of similar length to this. So a solo modifier, so that if you pick that up, then you can use Ronin solo, and this adventure called The Frozen Tears of the Lady of the Snow. Mist. Death Valley, so this is a horror western quick start TTRPG. You've got your adventure, which you might be able to tweak for other things, as well as your system in here. This is a GM'd game as well. In Spiral Isle, I think this is the last one, guys. Oh no, I missed something else, I think. In Spiral Isle is a sign language role-playing game. This is sort of aimed at teens. You're playing teens transported to another world, and the magic in this, you need to actually learn and use sign language to use the magic in this. So at the table, you do need to actually use the sign language signs, and it does have both American and British sign language incorporated into the rules. And Over Isle is a supplement. So this, in Spiral Isle, you're on a series of islands. It's kind of your Pendragons or descendants of Pendragons, but it's a variant world. And Over Isle, you have floating islands that you sort of ascend to. And there's additional magic and so on in Over Isle, and more complex signs to be learned. There was one thing I believe I missed, which is by We Evolve. So this is Action Potential. This is a far future Forged in the Dark engine game. So there are clocks, you have classes. Again, nice rule summary right on the interior page here. D6 from dice pool. You have your playbooks, and this is your far future. There are spaceships, but you can just sort of like clone yourself to another planet. So body swapping in that sense, jumping to other worlds, if you can say afford it, making a copy of yourself over there, uploading your consciousness back to it. Action potential is interesting. All right, everybody. I don't know how that many games that were. Maybe I should have put up a counter or something. Hope you enjoyed that overview. This has been fairly long. My voice is getting a little tired. Thank you very much if you made it this far. Please, if you have comments about any games that you would like more details on, or like a future video where I do a deep dive, let me know. You can pick up any of these games at composedreamgames.com. Either click on the Canadian marketplace or the UK marketplace. You could also just go directly to composedreamgames.com/marketplace for the Canadian one, or composedreamgames.co.uk for the UK one. Well, thank you all. And thank you for supporting us and our publishers. We appreciate it if you share this video, comments, likes, all those sorts of things. I usually don't say that, but they do really help. Have a look at some of the other videos we've done about some of these titles and about some of our many other titles. If you're interested in, I have 2 videos about all of the Canadian publishers' games we have. Those are a little behind. We were always adding new titles, but it was covering everything at the time. So we have 2 of those. And as always, good gaming. Archetype system that does use custom dice. Essentially, you do have core skills You roll you have an archetype that is best at each of those core skills. So the scholar here is best at smarts. When they're rolling that, they'll roll 5 dice instead of just 3, and you short 1. And there's a few other things. Shiver is a neat horror cinema role-playing game. There's the custom dice there. Fantastic for one-shots. They've also done some expansions that make it work a little bit better or support the longer-term play or show that it can support the longer-term play as well. I like it a lot. There is a GM screen that is particularly handy as you can keep track of something they call the Doom Clock along the top of that GM screen with a little marker that shows tension, and you have Doom events that happen throughout the scenario on the 15 and a half hour that your players are trying to avoid. So that's the core Shiver rulebook there. There is the Curse Library, which has 5 scenarios from different time periods and different genres altogether, showing off that it really is meant to be a horror cinema game that can handle any sort of time period and genre, anything that you would find in a movie. They have a Gothic supplement, which has an additional kind of core archetype for each of the skills as well. So you would have kind of your mad scientist and your shape changer and your immortal, which might be a vampire or might be something else. And that comes with its own kind of monster symbol dice that you could use as well. Shiver and this introduces a longer term campaign. So this is a 7-chapter long campaign, like a long, almost sort of adventure path that you could follow, which is expanded further in Shiver Gothic, set in the same setting here, the Disciples of Dragstone, the second Shiver Gothic. This is Secrets of Spiderhome. They did a rather substantial release following that, where they did a Shiver Blockbuster, Legends of the Silver Scream, and Shiver Slasher, Generation Murder. Both of these have 6 or 7 adventures that are sort of loosely tied together. And you can take your same PCs through each of them, as well as some additional widgets and roles. So Blockbuster, your actors, and you take your actor on to the next session or scenario that you're going to play through. And there's some rules for that actor. So you kind of play through the actual horror movie, but you also kind of step back and play as the actor and have that as your kind of between filler. Slasher Generation Murder has a generational concept. So you play through different decades where slashers are reoccurring, and you can play the descendants of the survivors, etc. And they had a starter sets that released at the same time for those. So Shiver Blockbuster, this has your Hollow World Dinosaur Interior Adventure. Very nice. And you have your starter set rulebook. Really, this has everything that you need to play. You can make your own characters, supports levels kind of 1 through 5, which the vast majority of the time you'll do a horror one-shot. It'll work with those levels, no problem. You do have your pre-gens, a map, a set of the custom dice. There is a die roller app as well, or a little online widget you can use. The inside of this box set also does have sort of a GM cheat sheet. So that is Shiver, and they did a slasher starter set as well. The main difference is you get a different adventure, different pre-gens.